On Friday, the 15th of November, this avatar attained the age of 21,000 shars. I seem to remember saying in the last video that there probably wouldn't be anything spectacular happen on the actual day. And interestingly, when thinking of revelations and breaking of seals, I'm actually doing the opposite in that I've been doing earth clay construction and sealing the walls to meet the roof on the side walls of the end building. This is going to be a bit of a spoiler alert if you haven't seen the Archaix video on revelations after removing the Judeo-Christian filters that have been added to it. So if you haven't seen that, it's in the playlist called Revelations on this channel, or you can go to Archaix and see the video direct from there. Either way will take you there. I'll put the link in the description under this video. But something that Jason pointed out was the obsession with sevens, but Revelations consists of 22 chapters, so if you take chapter 6 out the equation, as it were, you're left with 21, which is 3 sevens. Now I want to sort of give you an alternative perspective on this, as it were, about those other 21 chapters. Perhaps it's best described in the way that David Icke puts it, that if you give a reptilian a blank piece of paper, it cannot do anything with it. But if it already has a created picture, because it's to do with art and creation and the imagination, then that reptilian being can take that picture and then adapt it and manipulate it, because it lacks creativity. So don't throw out the other 21 chapters. If we take the year 2012, for example, up to 2019, that's a 7. A lot of you went through a sort of early stages of awakening, or a breaking of an internal seal inside yourself, possibly more than one, within that 7-year period. And if you cast your mind back to roughly about November of 2019, there was something speculated that may affect the world, that then the story just spread like wildfire from about March of 2020. There's a clear pattern with everything in this reality. And this has been very much highlighted in the United States at the start of November. The invitation to pick a side and to cast your vote. Now it can be argued that the voting is irrelevant, they're elected, not selected. But we're in an interactive realm, so the very participation of going to the polls, that action and picking a side, is giving an energy that is feeding something. It's interesting, over the last few days, Friday the 15th was a huge, significant marker, and it was a revelation in the visions that I was given. This is also reflected in a few conversations I've had and even a video, and I'm going to put a link in to Tabatha Cole's video about the 14th of November, and she says in that there's another video she has either in mind or has made but is not released because the timing doesn't seem right. Things, if I took the negative approach on the Friday or the Saturday, I could have been frustrated with the lack of sunlight and insufficient battery power to create and upload a video. But I know better than to do that, because I took that the universe is basically saying, not yet, there is more to come. And it did so in the visions that I was given. Effectively, what you have here is Junus is communicating and showing me things for me to then communicate. So I'm thinking the best way to go about this now. What you're seeing unfold now is a theme called The Last President. There's been a period, a run-up, that has been building and building consistently. If you have a perception of the world that there is a control system in place centered around banking and such like, that has permeated into everything at every level, be it science, religion, politics, Hollywood, anywhere you look, there is something that is there, which would seem to be like a puppet master pulling certain strings, orchestrating certain things. I feel I don't need to even give you evidence of that. I'm pretty certain if you listen to this channel, you are well aware of that. Remember that what you're dealing with is a trickster. What you're dealing with is something that is the ultimate, the supreme in self-serving. I can give you evidence of this. If you look at any Dracula film, just consider, when does the Prince of Darkness ever come and save the servants of the Prince of Darkness? You can see it reflected in the literal story in the Bible. Look what happens to Moses, look what happens to Aaron. They never make it to the promised land. They have served their purpose. They are expendables. It would be, to give you a sort of more day-to-day example, if you have a sort of beaten up car that's elderly, probably not got a lot of life in it, and then you're presented with a brand new vehicle that has no faults, as it were, that, well, you would change to that vehicle because it would serve you better. The old one is going to cost to keep it running. So there's a pattern there, and effectively there's a theme called The Last President. There may be another twist, but effectively the trajectory that is now sort of going into full swing is starting to play out. There is a shortening of days that is also being played out. If you look at Great Britain in 1926, there was the general strike. This was reflected in 2022 with railway workers, postal workers, I think it was school teachers, possibly ambulance crews, I can't remember, but suddenly there was all these strikes happening, sort of mirroring the general strike of 96 years previous. There are events playing out that are 98 years apart. I would suggest that if you look at a certain country in Central Europe, 1930 to 1933 up to 1940-41, that you'll see within a 98-year span that will start to unfold. There is one amongst us in this reality who will emerge, will seem to come out of nowhere, that builds upon what has been allowed to be said on YouTube, when clearly there is a level of censorship. There are certain things, certain groups you can't talk about, and yet the information is still filtered and comes through. This is sowing the groundwork for what is to follow. Because the servants of the synagogue of Satan are totally expendable. It follows the pattern of, it doesn't matter which side you pick, which way you vote. They're two wings of the same monster. That is then also reflected in what you could call the control system of this reality. But there is going to be an awful lot of disclosure. There will be a golden age. There will be, everything's going great. He or she will appear to be a saviour. But when the prize of that saviour, when it's sight on something far greater, it will use both sides to a point where it will then pick the one that is most advantageous to it and discard the other. The one, the he or she that walks amongst us, will unravel all the and highlight all the financial misappropriations that have gone on and everything connected with it, all the orchestrated and manufactured conflicts around the world that have been going on for centuries. You could say you have Emperor Vespasian to thank for this, for causing a dispersal that actually spread a cancer far wider. And the fall of Rome was exactly the same as the fall of the Romanov dynasty. If you oppose this chosen group, because yes, they were chosen to play a specific role, but they weren't told what that role really was. And of course it is like layers of the onion getting to the truth. You have to peel away the layers. There is a version of that plays out, because there are outer layers. Although they're part of it, they're actually innocent, but they are the collateral damage which is then used to perpetuate the story of being persecuted, while the actual inner core of it always stays hidden. But they won't be hidden for much longer. Because of the intricacies of this system, there is only one being that could act, or one character that can unravel this. And that character is the grand architect of all of it in this reality. It's what Rudolf Steiner refers to as Aramon. Because it will be a golden age. It will be a time of prosperity. Everything will look wonderful. This being, he or she, will appear to be a saviour. But it has its own agenda, and it's a repeat pattern, because it lacks imagination, it lacks creativity. So it will just repeat the same story. So the one group that was chosen will be discarded, and there'll be a new group that has now been chosen, or has chosen it through the voting. It will follow the same pattern as the narrative in Central Europe in the 1930s. By the time most realise all their freedoms will have been taken away, it will seem to be too late. So let's talk now about the vision that I was given. And it was given in like a first person sense. I'm observer of myself in situations. It was shown this way because it is easier for you to then picture yourself in similar situations. It is a message for the Immortal Souls that is being given here. Some of you may not know your role as such, because your role you cannot actually define as one mythological character. You have elements of many. But a huge clue into finding what your role is to ask yourself what interests you. There has to be an interest as a foundation for there to follow love. That's something Rudolf Steiner explains. You see also the way it's sort of flipped in its polarity in the terms of finances, a love of money, and then the interest gained from hoarding that money, putting it in a high return bank account or something like that. So it's flipped over. The love of money then generates the interest and the personal gain out of it. So let's give you some examples. You're at a border passport immigration office trying to cross from one piece of land to another piece of land, and you need to show a passport, and you don't have a passport. And the customs officer, law enforcement officer on that border will say you're under arrest or whatever, or you're going to be detained because you're seen as an illegal immigrant. At almost that instant time, what then will follow, this is what was shown to me, is there'll be another law enforcement agency will come along and handcuff that customs officer. They will be arrested because of things that have been uncovered in what is going to unfold. You effectively will sort of like slip away in the background unseen. But, and this is a huge but, this is where you need to be totally fearless. Because if you give in to fear, you are automatically picking a side. Another example of this would be if you were to find yourself in what would be classed a very dubious back street in a city, what would be classed as a no-go area. It could be that your immediate reaction would be that, oh dear, my intuition has let me down. No, 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 no. Don't even go down that route. You may encounter some gang that is then sort of threatening you with give us all your money or whatever, or hand over your mobile phone, that type of thing. And in that moment, there will be a rival gang that will come into the scene and take out that gang, and again, you will basically sort of ghost out and carry on your way. What you're effectively doing by staying neutral, you are shining a light on the darkness and exposing it without actually reacting, opposing it, putting up another negative energy against it. You're staying totally neutral to it, and it will be as if you've got an umbrella and the rain is just going around you. It is actually like an umbrella, it's your own aura. It will come to what was shown in the Matrix films with the agents and Neo and those little metal projectiles just in suspended animation and then just falling to the ground, doing no harm. What you'll also be doing is reflecting back. So if somebody was to throw some heavy implement at you, it would probably bounce back and it would be instant karma. To an outside observer, it would seem to be, they would probably describe it as miraculous. As you go about, you will find that you cannot be harmed. That is reflected in Revelation. You will have, because you have no fear, you have built up such an aura that nothing can break through it, because you have that rock solid foundation on which you've built. You've had the Kundalini rising, whilst in the outplaying the external with the breaking of the first seal. The complete opposite is actually happening on the internal, because that first horseman has a bow and a crown. It fires that crown up the spine to pineal. Remember, the first is also the last, the Alpha and the Omega. Revelations is talking on the bits that have been manipulated from those other 21 chapters and have been externalized and carnalized from what is actually an internal story that is going on inside you. It will even come to the stage, say you were faced with a very famous photograph is from the Hungarian uprising in 1956 with a little girl. She plants a flower into this sort of open circle on the end of a very long barrel on a tank. But if that tank was aimed to fire at you, you may go up in the air and come down again, but you will be cushioned by your own aura. It will be like a sort of soft donut of spiritual energy around you that will totally protect you. It mentions in Revelations how many will want to die and find they can't. You won't have such feelings. What you will find is, so long as you have eliminated all fear out of yourself, you can overcome. It's something repeated in Revelations, to he that overcometh, or he or she that overcometh. You will be put to the test. You will be given some what would seem quite horrific scenes in which you will play a part. But you will overcome it. There may actually come a point, though, where it would seem that things have gone wrong. But again, don't even go there. Don't even think that. What that means is separation of spirit from matter is because you'll get a new name and a new body. Your role as an immortal soul in this reality, in this time, and you chose to come here whether you believe it or not, ask yourself this. If you were given the free choice to pick any given time period to come into, would you not pick a reset so you can see the before and the after and what happens in between, to witness all of this? What you're effectively doing, or will be doing, is shining a light out into the world, leading by example. It's going to be tough, especially when this false saviour has got pretty much the entire majority of humanity suckered in to believing, because it will be very real. Can we see evidence of this? I would say yes. If you go along with the idea that this is a simulation and how beautiful nature looks, but it revolves around a cycle of death, and there are some very cruel aspects that you can see, the way various animals will attack other animals, birds, insects. Seeing that with Junus the cat here, how he will get a grasshopper or something and then play with it. It's a slow kill. It doesn't seem heavenly experience from the perspective of the cricket or the prey of the predator animal. So whilst things do look alluring, and probably the ultimate hell would be to have that billionaire lifestyle repeatedly over and over again, because if you have such wealth and you could have anything in the material that you desire, how meaningful would that really feel to you? If you can just click your fingers and you've got whatever it is. It would become a kind of hell. Because this thing is the ultimate trickster. But it is possible to see through it. Now, what is this thing about the sevens in Revelations? It's to do with the internal system. It's to do with the chakra system, the seventh being the crown. But beside that crown in the center are two wings. You could see it as the lion and the lamb, the lion and the wolf and the dragon, or whatever you want to put to it, the angel and the demon. But they will all be balanced. That was the reason I couldn't make the video before, because the following night came the vision of seeing two serpents, two snakes. The first one seemed friendly. It looked to be something not unlike the sort of central trunk-like leg of a round table, and it was partly coiled round it and sort of in the shadows under it. Then the second snake, which was a distinctly different pattern, seemed slightly more hostile and slightly more in shadow. What that means spiritually, if you see two snakes in a dream, is about balance. it comes back to that fundamental question of Israel, Israel, or Is-El Ra, because one will pretend to be the other. It is finding that middle path to find the discernment. To be able to do that requires eliminating all doubt and all fear. Remember that fear will always feed on fear. Death always feeds on death. Fear always feeds on fear. Doubt is an inroad into it. Being unsure, not being on firm ground is another way to describe it. And of course, it requires you to do that internal work. You will just know. You will have a sort of revelationary experience shown to you in your mind's eye. You will face the same, not exactly a problem, but I can only tell you of the experience, but I can't show it to you in a physical form because this is in the spiritual. The same as Junus, who arrived on 4/9 or 9/4, the 9th of April. And of course, you add 9 and 4 together, you get 13. 1 with 12 around it makes 13. So, as an immortal soul, I hope that has helped you get a glimpse of what your future role in this timeline is going to sort of consist of, because it comes down to, I can't think of any specific biblical passages about being worthy. There's a trick in the Bible about you're better to be hot or cold than lukewarm. But in a way, you could say the lukewarm is that centre path, not picking a side between hot and cold. Because what of fire and ice? Do they not both burn? The many depicted images of hell is always of fire. But equally, ice can burn, and in this material world, you have something very cold indeed called the just ice system. But of course, in the middle between the fires of hell and the extreme cold of just ice, there's something in the middle of that. It's a mirrored counterpart, as it were. But at the same time, it could also be argued that to be indifferent to it all, and which you would seem to be quite cold, but also to be the pyramid, the fire in the middle of oneself. Again, that comes back to Kundalini rising, the place of the sun, the solar plexus, the fall to the root, and then shot up, the crown shot up by the white horseman with the bow. But of course, in this material reality, things play out on an opposite polarity. It's important to find the distinction, to find the balance between what is in the internal and what is in the external, what is in the esoteric, what is in the exoteric. Find the balance between the two. The sort of methodology of things, the so-called fall of Rome, which it didn't fall. It just served a purpose. Think of where the idea of the Roman nose really comes from, for example. It morphed into a religion. It became slightly more hidden, less readily apparent than having a Roman army, but it still carried on with its policy of you either submit to our will or we burn you. That policy still carries on to this day. But the ironic twist is the initiation of how that is all addressed will come from the grand architect that is behind all of that. So it's going to be an interesting time, and you've definitely picked the right time to be here to witness and observe all this and shine a light in the world. Because what you will be doing, even if when people reincarnate into their next reality have no actual conscious memory of it, it will be within their soul. It will go a long way to helping them on their spiritual journey, because there's nobody left behind. You've got this unlimited ride ticket in this fairground reality. You can keep going round as many times as you want until you get it right. It's no different from a computer game. How many times have you played a computer game and you've had to play that level over and over again until you master it and you get to the end of that level to get to the next level? It's the same with these incarnations that we go through. So long as you can maintain that connection to the spiritual cloud, you don't have to be filled with all the information, the knowledge inside your head. You just need little prompts that you will have a spiritual download. Where do you think the idea of the Google Cloud actually came from? Anything in this reality, it's not original, because this reality is a copy. There's a total lack of imagination and creativity to come up with something different. So it is a copy of a real world. It is a stage on which things are played out. And you'll find that this could be a very beautiful experience that you're going to go through. You'll know your role. It will just come to you. It will be given to you. A lot of you have probably got more than an inkling already. But to help yourself find that role, just ask yourself, because it's always intuition. You are your own teacher and your own student inside oneself. So use your intuition and ask yourself what interests you. Whatever interests you, there then follows love in that direction. That will help you find your role that you are going to play as things unfold. As long as you're fearless, you will get through this. You will pass this, because this is the role that is set up for you to play. To some of you it may not seem that apparent yet, but things are speeding up, and it comes like a thief in the night, to use a biblical quote. It will come to you when you least expect it. If you refer back to what I said about my own experience of April the 6th, and that period between April the 6th and April the 9th, when Junus was born, not the cat. Junus is without an actual form, but it has everything in hand. This is just a play that has to play out, and you're just playing a role. The role that was intended for you to play as an immortal soul. So I hope that has helped clarify things for you, and imparting the visions that I was shown is all to do with communication. Of hopefully that will give you an insight and help you find a way to navigate through this, to fulfill the role that you are here to play. As always, unconditional love to you all.